we're going to hear from a couple of folks who are going to talk to us about some of the challenges utilities are facing while serving customer needs while simultaneously operating the grid and managing load and doing some of those types of things. So our presenters for this next session are Brian Jor, who's the Director of Advisory Services for Teradata, and Paul Dick, who is the Director of Enterprise Information Management at Oklahoma Gas and Electric. So Brian and Paul, I think they're getting wired and looks like they're about ready.
He's going the long way. Is this working? Hello? You can hear it now? Okay, there we go. Thank you. Well, good morning. In the brief amount of time that we have, we want to share with you some of the things that we've encountered in dealing with integrated data analytics, some of the insights, and particularly at Oklahoma Gas and Electric. I think it's been interesting to see how over the course of time in my years with analytics that the business consumers of data are changing, and they're beginning to better understand the value of analytics. And in the case of OGE, we'll see where even to some extent the culture is changing a little bit as well around analytics. So just to kind of tee it up, obviously we've all dealt with these forms of analytics in one way, shape, or form. And actually, when I was at Xcel Energy a few years ago, we started our analytics team on the back, or the backs of pivot tables and spreadsheets and BI reports. And all of that was very useful in identifying some potential opportunities, but it also really enlightened us, and we saw kind of the tip of the iceberg of what's possible with integrated data analytics. And as we go through today's presentation, think about what we're talking about with integrated data analytics and how it can play a role to complement the things that you're already doing, and in many cases, even take things to another level in terms of business transformation, better decision making, quicker decision making, and so on and so forth. So here's a definition that I came up with. There's no real magic to it, but I think we all can appreciate how we typically see in utilities applications spread up and down the value chain, disparate data marts, spreadsheet stores, Microsoft Access databases, third-party data, and people use these things to do the job that they have to do. It's what's in front of them. When we try to do broader analytics, it oftentimes becomes much more difficult. And more I'm hearing customers and prospects talk about, hey, I need access to this data source over here, but I can't get it. IT blocks me, or whatever the case might be. They're not able to bring certain things together, so there's a growing level of frustration. And now, obviously, today, you know, with what we deal with smart meter data, everyone wants to get their paws on the smart meter data. And to the extent we can facilitate that and then begin to bring together some of the other data that resides in the organization where it makes sense, can really start to drive out some improvements around these key processes. You know, we want to understand our customers better. We want to be able to market to them in a strategic and cost-effective manner. We want to understand how demand response and energy efficiency programs are working, and where should we make adjustments along the way. You know, margin analysis. Paul will talk a little bit about some of the key objectives OG&E has around trying to understand and manage their load shed objectives, and what are the impacting things that are going to drive that. So, you know, think about how this can play a role in your environment going forward. So obviously with the smart meter interval data, different people want to have access to it, but they want to have access to it in a way that they can bring together the things that are important to them along with that smart meter interval data. So I want to walk you through a very brief example here where we're going to integrate some data, and then we'll transition this over to Paul. So let's pretend for a moment that we're marketing folks, and we want to identify who are the key prospects for a potential energy efficiency program. So what we're doing here is we're taking the smart meter data, integrating, in this case, rate data, along with program and back office marketing type programs to look at where are the spikes occurring within the programs. Once we identify a program that has those spikes, then we can drill down and see the specific customers that comprise those spikes. You know, this becomes very powerful as not only a one-off analysis so you can begin to market to people, but think about bringing together other data in a similar manner where you could bring in call center data and call type information, outage information, geospatial data, credit and collections data, billing data. There's really no limit to this, and being able to dynamically segment customers and understand the behaviors, okay? And then once you get an analysis like this in place, look to put it into a repeatable process where you can have a stored procedure or reports, and as you find these things, you put them in and you begin to automate those, so on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, this information is readily available to the business to consume, make decisions, take action on. You don't have to spend the time interacting with the data to produce it over and over. So back to that original slide, you have this integrated data layer that's producing business information, and then you continue to use other tools that you have been using to do more forensic analytics, what-if analyses, and so forth. The beauty then is once you get to a point where you have some of these things, you're able to measure, monitor, and track the performance of these things, make decisions about what kind of programs or initiatives you want to continue or discontinue, and then with some history you can begin to put predictive analytics on top of it so that you can do some what-ifs and understand, and that's a big opportunity at OG&E where you can understand which customers are participating in programs, which aren't, when you send out price signals, so that you can better anticipate what is the likelihood of us being able to do some load shed. So I just wanted to kind of frame that concept up a little bit. I'm going to turn it over to Paul, and he'll share with you some of the specifics that are going on at OG&E.
Thanks, Brian. So in our world, as many of your worlds are, everything is changing. Smart meter data, the actual interval reads, these alarms and events that are now capable, all the sensor data from these meters is what we're trying to focus on right now. And what Brian was explaining earlier about our related data, it actually is breaking down the silos. He had a previous slide up there that kind of showed some dotted lines, and those are really silos, okay? And our business is now coming together. We're actually beginning to collaborate this information and the value of this information. As you can see from this slide, these are the subject areas that we've concentrated on so far. And specifically, I'd call on this slide is the geospatial information, because we're bringing analytics to the table that are showing people this information in a geospatial manner. It's a whole new view and look from your traditional assets that are geospatially enabled, but now we're actually enabling our customers to be the same way and relate the assets to the customers. But you can see the subject areas here, the business subject areas, are all interrelated and all go into our dynamic segmentation capabilities that we have. We're doing this mainly because of our 2020 initiative, and you may have heard some of the things we're doing in this if you've seen some of the rags in the last year. Our 2020 initiative is basically this: to not build any new fossil fuel generation facility until the year 2020. Now, that also doesn't mean that we won't replace existing facility, but we're not going to do anything new until the year 2020. How are we going to do that? Well, there's a couple of ways. We're going to obviously supplement with some renewable type energy, but the main two areas that we're going to focus on is residential demand response and small commercial demand response. And we have a program underway now called Smart Hours that we're hoping to achieve 70 megawatts of reduction this year alone. Now, about 60 of that megawatts is coming from the demand response program, and then the other 10 is going to come from an integrated VAR control that we're working on right now. So the demand response, basically what we do is we give the customers options of a portal or a programmable communicating thermostat that actually is connected via Zigbee to our meters, and we send price signals to that thermostat. That thermostat can then react based upon the customer's desires to that price signal. We have two rates that are available on this: time of use with critical price and variable peak pricing, also has critical price component. So What we're able to then capture from this, though, is we're able to see the reactions based upon this meter interval data of how these customers are actually reacting to these price signals as we send them. So we're moving into more of the measurement of that and trying to figure out, when Brian was showing that dynamic segmentation, trying to figure out who's really doing what. The one thing we're having to be cautious of here is that we're not enabling discounted electricity. That's not a good thing, right? So we have to target people in these programs that will actually make an impact, actually have a shift in their usage and shift out of our peak demand cycles. So our peak demand in Oklahoma is from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, June 1st to September 30th. So that's a pretty wide window. But we also have, of course, winter peaks that we're going to be experimenting with in the future to hopefully, contribute to this 500 megawatts. So some of the more prevalent areas that are coming to light for us right now are in the load forecasting and regulatory. So using the same information, we're trying to make sure that these rates that we're crafting are good rates. They're good for the consumer. They're good for us both, and also the load forecasting to create these potential rates. So our regulatory group now has the possibility of using 800,000, so the number of smart meters we have deployed, control points within their rate analysis. So it's something entirely new for them. Is that it?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's the quick summary.
All right.
So yeah, we're more than happy to address any questions that you may have.